Hey everyone, David from Sunday Sounds here. As worship keys players, during the months of November and December, we find ourselves playing songs and arrangements that we're probably not playing the other 10 months out of the year. Of course, I'm talking about Christmas music, and it can be a lot of fun to play these songs, but it can also require some different types of sounds that might not be in your regular palette of go-to presets for your keyboard. So in this video, I want to talk about a few go-to sounds that you might want to consider adding to your palette as you prepare to play Christmas music. So I have a preset with several layers dialed in here, and I'm going to highlight one of them at a time and just give you a little bit of insight into how you might be able to recreate these, whether you're using MainStage, Ableton, or Omnisphere, or whatever else you find yourself using as you prepare your keys presets. So let me play a little bit of a song here with all of these layers in, and then I'll dive into them one at a time and sort of explain some of the thought behind them. So this is sort of a dramatic ballad, "O Holy Night," this really big dramatic sound that has a lot of orchestral elements, brass elements, and some bells as well. So let me pull back these layers one at a time and sort of walk you through how I built this sound from the ground up. First off, we're going to start with this French horn layer, and these horns sort of crescendo in, and it's nice and dramatic and adds a lot of atmosphere and intensity to the sound. It sounds like this. And this really nice French horn layer goes a long way towards filling this sort of orchestral space. It sort of blends the line between like a traditional sound and something that's being heard in a lot of modern movies and a lot of film scores. And it has a ton of emotional intensity. On its own, it can be a little bit abrupt. This is a crescendo, so it dies off after a little while. But when you layer it in with some other pieces that we're going to talk about in a minute, it just gives your initial attack a nice bit of oomph. So if you're in MainStage or Ableton or Omnisphere, you can search for this French horn sort of sound and layer these things together to get this sort of technique. Next, I've got a choral sound. This is MainStage. It's called a Christmas choir patch, and it sounds like this. And this is really sort of functioning as a pad underneath everything else. It's nice and ambient. I've got a lot of reverb on it and a little bit of pitch modulation. It's giving it this sort of twinkle sparkle up in the top end. And I've got the brightness of this choral sound mapped to my mod wheel. So as I move my mod wheel up, the sound gets brighter, fills a little bit of more space in the high end. And when I put this together with that crescendoing French horn, the Christmas choir sort of glues the French horn sound together as I change between chords. So these two layers together sound like this. You can see how even after the French horns crescendo and then fade out, that choir sound is still there, present, sort of gluing everything together. Next I have this London Street Band kind of sound, and this is a layered patch that I created in MainStage. I layered some brass samples, a trombone, and an oboe all together, and it sounds kind of goofy, maybe on its own, but it definitely has this sort of traditional, I think like Ebenezer Scrooge kind of sound. And when you're playing Christmas music, sometimes you need something that just has some of that vibe to it. And when you layer it in with these other sounds, then it blends in really nicely and adds something that's familiar. And it again sort of glues things together, kind of like that Christmas choir patch does. It's also nice because it has some of the same brassy notes as that French horn crescendo, but it's consistent, so you can play it like a pad. And you can see as we layer some of these elements together, there's some that are a little bit more futuristic, a little bit more modern, and then we've got some really traditional elements as well. And when we're trying to play modern worship Christmas music or covers of Christmas songs, it's really nice to have a little bit of the traditional sounds along with some modern sensibility so that things sound fresh. Lastly, I've got this Twilight Organ layer, and this is a really cool one. I'm just going to play it in isolation so you can hear how it sounds. Now this is definitely not a traditional Christmas sort of texture. That's what I was talking about. This is definitely a more modern twist. We've got this sort of organ sound that swells in and fades in over time and has a nice bit of distortion on it. But we also have this sort of tubular church bell sound that is right away when you play the keys, when you attack. And these two sounds blended together sort of blur the line between these traditional Christmas sounds and textures and something that's really unexpected and totally new. And I think that tubular bell sound is really one of the most important elements of this patch overall, because those tubular bells to me just are very much reminiscent of these dramatic Christmas carol type songs. So when we bring all of these layers in, those tubular bells still sort of sit out on top of everything else. And to me, that's sort of what is saying that this is a Christmas song or this is a Christmas keyboard patch, are those bells. And when you blend it all together, it sounds nice and big. It sounds great for these dramatic minor key kind of moments, but you could do Joy to the World or something big and anthemic just as easily. So when you pull all these notes together, it ends up like this. So if you want to build something like this yourself, then you're going to want to keep a mind out for these sorts of orchestral sounds, these choral sounds. Pay attention to adding a little bit of reverb if you want something to function as a pad, and then also searching for a tubular bell or a church bell type of preset, whether you're using Omnisphere, Ableton, or MainStage. If you want something that's done for you and you're a MainStage user, then we have a library of Christmas presets that are already dialed in and ready to go. This actual patch that I've used in this video is a part of it, and it's called MainStage Christmas Patches. I've got a link to that preset library in the description of this video. Regardless, I hope that you have a lot of fun playing Christmas songs this year, and thanks for checking this video out. Have a great day.